Okay, so why do I say that that my daughter was a victim of patient abuse and neglect? I finally got the medical records, from the hospital, after I got the estate set up, and I got the results back from DHHS. Meanwhile, I had talked with the Board of Nursing. They told me that they had already investigated because the hospital had filed a complaint with them when they did their investigation. So let's talk about the Board of Nursing for a minute. The hospital didn't tell them everything. They told them the version of what happened that they wanted the board to know. When the Board of Nursing investigated, they didn't have any determination, any ruling, any discipline for the nurse. Nothing. Which would lead one to think, well, the nurse must not have done anything wrong. Well, she was fired. She did something wrong. She lost her job. As I was combing through, because I didn't have the DHHS report back, but I did have the medical records. And as I was combing through the medical records, every time I found something, I called the Board of Nursing back or sent them an email. Now, there were a lot of times that I called them back, and it could be nighttime, it could be 4 o'clock in the morning, it could be Sunday afternoon. It didn't matter to me because I could leave a voicemail, and I would be irate on those voicemails. When you see that somebody has gone into medical records and falsified information about my daughter's oxygen results, after she died, even after Code Blue was called, that there's all these numbers. I got a problem with that. But Linda Brixton didn't do that. A different nurse did that. And again, that's going to be talked about in another video. When I saw that the night of the 9th, my daughter is noted that she pulled out her catheter. And again, I'm guessing because I don't have the records in front of me. But let's just say she pulled out her catheter about 9:30 p.m. And I'm not even sure that she pulled it out herself, to be honest with you. Y'all know what I'm saying? But according to the medical records, it took the nurse 57 minutes to get my child anything for pain. 57 minutes. The catheter, however it came out inflated with a 1-inch bulb through her urethra, through her pee hole. And it took the nurse almost an hour to administer pain meds. Remember when I told y'all that the hospital had been, they didn't call me, but they had called him, and he didn't know what was going on. He just know that his sister wanted me to hurry up and get back there. That's part of what was going on. She had laid there and suffered because the nurse did not have, at least to my knowing, I have to say allegedly and stuff like that, to keep from being held liable for libel. My best investigation says that the nurse did not have any other medical emergency that would have prevented her from giving my daughter a pain medicine. As a matter of fact, my daughter hadn't had any pain medicine all evening, not since that afternoon. Let me tell you, because I didn't ever tell you what her cause of death was. The cause of death was a anoxic brain injury. Anoxic brain injury is lack of oxygen to the brain. Y'all hear me? She had the nasal cannula at her nose. There was no reason for me to suspect that she was not getting her oxygen when I saw her on the night of May 9th, morning on May 10th. No reason at all for me not to suspect that she was not, no reason for me to suspect that she was not getting her oxygen. And I didn't know what hypoxia was. I didn't know what the symptoms of lack of oxygen were. But I do know that in the medical records, it took her 57 minutes to give my daughter anything for pain. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? But I screamed so much in the ear of Board of Nursing that they had to take another look. They had to investigate again. Okay? They did administer some form of discipline. Not enough. DHHS, Joint Commission. Let's talk about them. Now, the Joint Commission said that what happened with my daughter is called a sentinel event. CMS also calls these events never events because they are never supposed to happen. My daughter died from lack of oxygen. She wasn't a drowning victim. She didn't have a cop's knee on her neck. DHHS, according to their investigation, the hospital was in violation of 6 federal health care laws that allowed the nurse and other staff to get away with the things that they got away with that night. Basically, it says she was denied care while in cardiac arrest. She was left in restraints during a cardiac arrest. My daughter, according to DHHS, my daughter's oxygen had dropped to 62% by 2 a.m. That's when she stopped entering any oxygen readings in the chart. This nurse pretty much checked out, clocked out, whatever, at about 2 a.m. when it came to my daughter's health. In the DHHS report, it says that co-workers reported, a CNA reported that my daughter had complained of difficulty breathing earlier that night of May 9th, and that I think she told the nurse and the charge nurse, and she said they act like they didn't want to hear it. In the medical records, there is a long list of times that the monitor technician notified the nurse that the patient was off the cardiac leads. And the nurse response was that the patient refused, the patient refused, the patient refused. She might have had a couple of other excuses, but that was the main one, that the patient refused. And I looked at the times, and I'm like, wait a minute, I was there. She never came in the room and said anything about the cardiac leads not being on the patient. Because if she'd have said something, hell, I could have put them back. I knew how they went because I would take them off when I would bathe my daughter. And then, I would look to see where they came from until, I got the hang of it, and then I could just do it. Could take them off, bathe her, and put the cardiac leads back where they went. So basically, when they helped my daughter get back into bed, they did not reconnect the cardiac leads. And one of the co-workers, it says that one of the co-workers did ask the nurse if she was going to reconnect the cardiac leads, and she said no, according to this report, because she had done so 4 times already. So they don't even know when my daughter stopped breathing. My daughter was found slumped over in cold in what they call PEA. But basically, she was found lifeless, and she wasn't found by the nurse. She was found by a care partner, because the nurse never did go back into the room. The cardiac monitor had been silenced in the room. Now, again, this was brought up before. The Real Yvonne did a story on this some years ago. And people was in the comments, you can't silence the cardiac monitors and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Look, stop, okay? I ain't trying to hear that, because the Board of Nursing told me in a meeting that the cardiac monitor had been silenced in the room. I wouldn't make this up. That's why when I was in there, I didn't get any alerts. Usually you can't sleep or talk or anything in peace with that ding ding thing going off. I did not suspect that a nurse would not do their job. My daughter had been in this facility a few times, and she had always gotten excellent care. At some point after I left out the room, somewhere around 3:30, the cardiac monitor was silenced on the monitor technician's end. So in other words, somebody had gone into the room and silenced the monitor, so that, in other words, the monitor technician did not get any audible alerts anymore that the patient was in trouble, or that the patient had stopped breathing, or that the patient was off their leads, or that the patient's oxygen was dropping.